Good morning, dear students. Today we are going to study about the male reproductive system. As you know, a reproductive system or genital system is a system of organs within an organism which works together for the purpose of reproduction. The main functions of a reproductive system are to develop secondary sexual characters, then produce gametes, produce hormones that help in the regulation of the reproductive system, as well as produce an offspring by fertilization. So, male reproductive system, the course outcomes are to study or to understand the different organs as well as glands involved in the working of the male reproductive system, as well as to correlate the anatomical structures with their physiological, endocrine and biochemical functions. So the learning objectives would be, we have 4 learning objectives in the current topic. That is, first one is to identify the primary, accessory and supportive reproductive structures involved in the male system, then to map the precise anatomical pathway of sperm from production to delivery, to analyze the biochemical composition and clinical profile of cell, as well as to detail the different stages of spermatogenesis and correlate its hormonal regulation via the HPG axis, that is the hypothalamus pituitary gonadal axis. Now the male reproductive system, it mainly consists of 3 main organization parts. That is, the primary sex organs, which are the gonads, which produce the gametes, are the testes. They are responsible for the production of sperm and critical androgenic hormones like testosterone. Then we have the accessory sex organs, which mainly consist of ducts and accessory sex glands. The ducts are mainly 3, that is the epididymis, vas deferens or the ductus deferens, and the urethra. They mainly help in the storage and transport of sperms. And we have the accessory sex glands that are also 3 in number, that is the seminal vesicles, prostate gland and the bulbourethral gland, are also known as the Cowper's glands. The accessory sex glands mainly help in producing semen, which acts as a medium for the transport of sperm. Then we have the supporting structures, which is mainly scrotum and penis. These anatomical structures assist in the temperature regulation, delivery and joining of gametes. So moving on to the testes are paired organs that are covered by a sac-like covering known as a scrotum. They are mainly 5 cm long, 2.5 cm in diameter, and have about 10 to 15 gram in weight. Then the testes descend to the scrotum via inguinal canal at the 7th month of fetal development. Moving on to the histological part of testes, they are mainly covered by 2 protective layers, that is the tunica vaginalis, which is the outer, we can see here, this is the outer serous membrane known as the tunica vaginalis, and the tunica albuginea, which is the inner dense connective tissue. The tunica albuginea extends inwards, forming septums that divides the testes into 200 to 300 distinct compartments known as lobules. Now each lobule consists of 2 to 3 tightly coiled seminiferous tubules wherein the sperms are produced. We can see here, these are the lobules. These pyramid shaped things, compartments, are the lobules. Inside the lobules we can see the seminiferous tubules, and these seminiferous tubules are the sites for spermatogenesis, that is the sperm production. Now moving on to the seminiferous tubules, we can see that there are mainly 2 types of cells in the seminiferous tubules. One is the spermatogenic cells. These are the spermatogenic cells, and neighboring to the spermatogenic cells we can see the Sertoli cells or sustentacular cells. Now the spermatogenic cells are stem cells that actively differentiate to produce a mature sperm. That is, they are responsible for producing the male gamete, that is sperm. Now the Sertoli cells, they extend from the basement membrane to the lumen. They help in nourishing the spermatogenic cells. Then they form the vital blood testis barrier, which protects the spermatogenic cells or the sperms from external harsh agents. They nourish the developing cells, secrete fluid responsible for nourishment of sperms, and also produce the androgen binding protein, which is a protein responsible for the action of testosterone. And they also mediate the action productions of FSH, that is follicle stimulating hormone, and testosterone. Now moving on to the next type of cells which is found in the seminiferous tubule is the Leydig cells, or also known as the interstitial cells. They are seen as clusters between adjacent tubules. These cells synthesize and secrete testosterone, which is the main male sex hormone. So the seminiferous tubules mainly consist of two types of cells, that is spermatogenic cells, which is responsible for the production of mature sperm, and you have the Sertoli cells, which is responsible for the nourishment of spermatogenic cells and also mediate FSH and testosterone action. Then another cells that are found in the vicinity of the seminiferous tubules are the Leydig cells, which are the sites for production of testosterone. Now moving on to the ducts present in the male reproductive system, there are four types of ducts, that is the epididymis, ductus deferens or vas deferens, ejaculatory ducts, and the urethra. So the epididymis is a 4 cm long coma-shaped organ that originates from the posterior surface of the testis. These are the site of maturation of sperms, and wherein the sperms attain motility after maturation. They also act as a site for storage of sperm for up to 1 month. Then moving on to the next duct, that is a vas deferens or ductus deferens. It is about 4 cm in length. It starts from the end portion of the epididymis. It ascends via the inguinal canal and loops of the ureter, and finally terminates into the prostatic urethra. The function is the end portion of the ductus deferens is known as the ampulla. Function is it acts as a storage site for sperm for up to several months, and it also helps in the movement of sperm via peristalsis. Then the next duct is the ejaculatory duct. These are about 2 cm long. They are formed by the fusion of the seminal vesicle and the terminal portion of the vas deferens, that is the ampulla. They mainly help in the delivery of sperm into prostatic urethra during ejaculation. Then the last duct is the urethra, which is a 20 cm long tube. It acts as a terminal shared pathway for semen and urine in males. It consists of three parts, that is a prostatic urethra, membranous urethra, spongy or penile urethra. They are so named based on the area that they go through along their entire length. So the prostatic urethra is about 2 to 3 cm long. It passes through the prostatic gland. Then the membranous urethra passes through the perineum, and the spongy or penile urethra passes through the penis. So the ducts that are involved in the transport and storage of sperms are epididymis, starting from the epididymis, then moving on to ductus deferens, ejaculatory ducts, and finally the urethra. The scrotum, as we already know, is a sac-like system that helps in protecting the testis, or covering the testis from external environment. It maintains an environment of 2 to 3 degrees Celsius below the core body temperature, which is essentially for viability of sperms. It mainly consists of two types of muscles, that is a dartos muscle and cremaster muscle, which contract during cold or arousal to absorb body heat and relaxes during warmth. Then moving on to the penis, we know that it is a supporting structure that acts as a passageway for both semen and urine. The penis consists of it has a cylindrical shape and consists of three parts, that is a root, body, and glans penis. The core of the penis contains three erectile tissues, that is two corpora cavernosa layers and the corpus spongiosum. Now the root part, which includes the bulb of penis and crura, it is the proximal portion. The bulb of penis consists of corpus spongiosum, while the crura of penis consists of corpora cavernosa. Now the body part, which is the main part, it consists of three cylindrical erectile tissues, that is two dorsolateral corpora cavernosa and one medial corpus spongiosum. These muscle masses are covered by skin, fascia, tunica albuginea and tunica albuginea. Now the distal part is the penis, which is a slightly acorn-shaped enlarged portion of corpus spongiosum. It is surrounded by a loose skin known as prepuce or foreskin. The proximal margin of the glans penis is known as a corona, and the opening in the distal end is the external urethral